Good afternoon, 4th graders. Welcome back to my read aloud of Harry Potter. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 5. Yesterday we finished up Chapter 4, where we saw Hagrid had shown up at that little shack over on the sea to give Harry his letter that was his invitation to Hogwarts. So in this chapter, we're going to be moving on to Diagon Alley. So Chapter 5. I do want to change up the way I do one of the questions. I have kind of a harder question, so I want to ask the question before right now. So I'll ask one question before. That way you can kind of hear or listen for it, just so you don't, because I think it's a small detail, but it shows me that you're really paying attention. So I'll ask you it now, and then I'll ask the other two at the very end. So the first question that I have is, what kind of wand did Harry's father favor? So make sure you're listening in for that one, and then at the end of the video, I will give you your two other questions. Alright, Chapter 5, Diagon Alley. Harry woke up early the next morning. Although he couldn't tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself firmly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I woke up, oh my goodness. When I opened my eyes, I will be home in my cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise, and there it was, Aunt Petunia knocking on the door. Harry thought his heart sinking, but he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled. I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off him. The hut was full of sunlight, and the storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on this collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claws on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet so that he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that! Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, Harry said loudly, there's an owl! Pay him, Hagrid grunted into the sofa. What? He wants paying for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags. Finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 nuts, said Hagrid sleepily. Nuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out his leg so Harry could put the money into a small leather pouch and tied it up. Then he flew off through the open window. Hagrid yawned loudly and sat up and stretched. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Gotta get up to London and buy all your stuff for school. Harry was turning over the wizard coins and looking at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him got punctured. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his huge boots. I haven't gotten any money. And you heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic. Don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. You'd think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in their house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts, Wizard's Bank. Have a sausage. They're not bad cold, and I wouldn't say no a better birthday cake neither. Wizards have banks? Just one, Gringotts, run by goblins. Harry dropped a bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah. So you'd be madder to try to rob it. I'll tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything. Want to keep safe, except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyways, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He usually gets to do gets me to do more important stuff for him. Fetching you, getting things from Gringotts, he can trust me, see? Got everything? Come on, then. Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunshine. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah, but we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now. I got you. They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine himself flying. Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another sideways look. If I was to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning it at Hogwarts? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out a pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and then they sped off towards land. Why would you be mad if you were trying to rob the Gringotts? Harry asked. Spells, enchantments, said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dangerous gardens in the high-security vaults, and then you gotta find your way out. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see, deep under the underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, even if you did manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this for a while, Hagrid reading his newspaper, The Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone while they did this, but it was very difficult. He had never had so many questions in his life. Ministerial magic, messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Asked Harry, before he could stop himself. Of course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts. So old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler, if he ever there was. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning, asking for advice. But what does a Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the Muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry. Everyone wanted magic solutions to their problem. Nah, we're best left alone. At this moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded his newspaper, and they clambered up onto the stone steps onto the street. Passersby stared a lot at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as anyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, "See that, Harry? Things these muggles dream up, eh?" Hagrid said Harry, painting a bit as he ran to keep up. Did you say there are dragons at Gringotts? Well, so they say, said Hagrid. Crikey, I'd like a dragon. You'd like one? I wanted one ever since I was a kid. Here we go. And they reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid, who didn't understand Muggle money, as he called it, gave the bills to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. Still got your letter, Harry? He asked as he counted stitches. Harry took the parchment envelope out of his pocket. Good, said Hagrid. There's a list of everything you need. Harry unfolded the second piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First-year students will require 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 2. 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. 3. 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon, hide, or similar. 4. 1 winter cloak, black, silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothes should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshwook. A History of Magic, by Bethalda Bagshot. Magical Theory, by Aldebert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch, 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Philida Spore, Magical Drafts and Potions by Arsonist Jigger, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander, The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment: 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter standard size 2, 1 set of glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scale. Students may also bring an owl or a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. Can we buy all this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before, although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going. He was obviously not used to getting there in ordinary ways. He got stuck in the ticket barrier on the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the trains were too slow. I don't know how the Muggles managed without their magic, he said as they climbed a broken-down escalator that led up to the bustling road lines with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted crowds easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and music stores, hamburger restaurants and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if they could sell you a magic wand. This was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spellbooks and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursley has no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet, somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him was so far unbelievable, Harry couldn't help but trusting him. "This is it," said Hagrid, coming to a halt. "The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place." It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have even noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at it. Their eyes slid from the big bookshops onto the side of the record shop on the other side, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that he and Hagrid could only see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in the corner, drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to them. He was quite old and bald and looked like a toothless walnut. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him, and the bartender reached for a glass, saying, "The usual, Hagrid?" "Can't, Tom. I'm on Hogwarts business," he said, clapping his great hands on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the bartender, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The Leaky Cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old bartender. "Harry Potter. What an honor." He hurried out from behind the bar, rushed towards Harry, and seized his hand in tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Welcome back." Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with a pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the Leaky Cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last. So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud. Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all of a flutter. Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Dallas Diggles." "I've seen you before," said Harry, as Dallas Diggle's top hat fell off in excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers!" cried Dallas Diggle, looking around at everyone. "Did you hear that? He remembers me!" Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward, nervously, one of his eyes twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. Professor Quirrell, said Hagrid. Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts. Potter, stammered Quirrell, grasping Potter's hand. Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you. What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell? Defense against the dark arts, muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, Potter, he laughed nervously. You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself. He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. Must get on. Lost to buy. Come on, Harry. Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid let them through the bar, and out into a small courtyard, where there was nothing but trash cans and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. Told you, didn't I? Told you were famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling. Is he always that nervous? Yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, but then you took a few years off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and they were a bit nasty. Trouble with to Hag. Never been the same since. Scared of students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's my umbrella? Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks in the wall above the trash cans. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. Right, stand back, Harry. He tapped on the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered. It wiggled, and in the middle, a small black hole appeared. It grew wider and wider, and a second later they were facing an archway large enough even for Hagrid. An archway onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned right out of sight. Welcome, said Hagrid, to Diagon Alley. He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulders and saw the archway shrink instantly back into a solid wall. The sun shone brightly on the stack of cauldrons outside the nearest shop. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a sign hanging over them. Yeah, you'll be needing one, he said. But we gotta get your money first. Harry wished that he had about 8 more eyes. Excuse me. And he turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside, an apothecary, was shaking her head as they passed, saying, Dragon's liver, 17 sickles an ounce. They're mad. A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying, Eyelope Owl Emporium, 20, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy. Several boys about Harry's age had their noses pressed against the window with broomsticks in it. Look, Harry heard one of them say, the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever. There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes, and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. The windows stacked with barrels of bat spleen and eel eyes, tottering piles of spellbooks, quills, and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. Gringotts, said Hagrid. They have reached a snowy white building that towered over the little shops. Standing beside it, its burnished bronze door, wearing a uniform of scarlet and gold, was... Yeah, that's a goblin, said Hagrid quietly, as they walked up the white stone steps towards him. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry, and he had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and Harry noticed very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside. Now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with the words engraved upon them. Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there. Like I said, ye'd be mad to try and rob it, said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed them. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in the vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind long counters, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins in brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count, leading off the halls, yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. "Morning," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out of Harry Potter's safe." "You got his key, sir?" "Got it here somewhere," said Hagrid, as he started emptying his pockets onto the counters, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's books of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose, and Harry watched the goblin on their right weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. Rubies as big as glowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny green key. The goblin looked at it closely. It seemed to be in order. "And I've got a letter from Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid importantly, throwing at his chest. "It's about you-know-what in Vault 730. The goblin read the letter carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it back to Hagrid. "I will have someone take you down to both vaults. Griphook!" Griphook was another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pocket, he and Harry followed Griphook towards one of the doors leading off the hall. "What's the you-know-what in Vault 730? Harry asked. "Can't tell ya," said Hagrid mysteriously. "Very secret Hogwarts business. Dumbledore trusted me. More my job's worth to tell you than that." Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised when they were in a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downward, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks towards them. They climbed in it, Hagrid with some difficulty, and then they were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left, middle fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way, because Griphook wasn't steering. Harry's eyes shut as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he had thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of a passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon, but too late, they plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake, where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceilings and floors. I never know," Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. "What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite?" "Stalagmite's got an M in it," said Hagrid. "And don't ask me questions just now. I'm gonna be sick." He did look very green, and when the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees from trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out, and as it cleared, Harry gasped. Inside were mounds of golden coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze nuts. "All yours," smiled Hagrid. "All Harry's." It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they would have had it from him faster than a blink of an eye. How often had they complained how much Harry cost them to keep? And all the times there had been a small fortune belonging to him buried deep under London? Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. "The golden ones are galleons," he explained. 17 silver sickles to a galleon, and 29 nuts to a sickle. It's easy enough, right? That should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll keep the rest safe for you." He turned to Griphook. "Vault 730, please. And can we go a little more slowly?" "Only one speed," said Griphook. They were going even deeper now, and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled round tight corners. They went rattling over underground ravines, and Harry leaned over the side to try and see what was down at the dark bottom. But Harry Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruff of his neck. Vault 730 had no keyhole. Stand back, said Griphook importantly. He stroked the door gently with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. If anyone but Gringotts' goblin tried that, they'd be sucked through the door and trapped in there, said Griphook. How often do you check to see if anyone's inside? Harry asked. About once every 10 years, said Griphook with a rather nasty grin. Something really extraordinary had been inside this top security vault. Harry was sure, and he had leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see a fabulous set of jewels at the very least. But at first he thought it was empty, and then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped up in a brown paper lying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but knew better than to ask. Come on, back in its infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best if I keep my mouth shut, said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, they stood blinking in the sunlight outside of Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first now that he had a bag full of money. He didn't have to know how many galleons there were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he had ever had in his whole life. More money than even Dudley had ever had. Might as well get your uniform, said Hagrid, nodding towards Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up in the leaky cauldron? I hate them Gringotts cart. He did still look a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Malkin's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malkin was a squat, smiling witch dressed in all mauve. Hogwarts, dear, she said, when Harry started to speak. Got the lot here. Another young man being fitted up just now, in fact. In the back of the shop, a boy with pale, pointed face was standing on the footstool while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Malkin stood Harry on the stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. Hello, said the boy. Hogwarts too? Yes, said Harry. My father's next door buying my books, and my mother's up the street looking at wands, he said. He had a bored, drawling voice. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own brooms. I think I'll bully Father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. Have you got your own broom? The boy went on. No, said Harry. Play Quidditch at all? No, Harry said again, wondering what on earth Quidditch was. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house. And I must say, I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet? No, Harry said, feeling more stupid by the minute. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All of our family has been in Slytherin. Imagine being a Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm, said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. I say, look at that man, said the boy suddenly, nodding toward the front door. Hagrid was standing there, grinning at Harry, pointing at 2 large ice creams to show him he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He worked at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy. I've heard of him. He's sort of a servant, isn't he? He's the gamekeeper, said Harry, like he was liking the boy less and less every second. Yes, exactly. I heard he's some sort of savage, lives in a hut on the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk, tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coldly. Do you? Said the boy with a slight sneer. Why is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't feel much like going into the matter with the boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not sounding sorry at all. But they were our kind, weren't they? They were a witch and wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think that they should have let I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up, our way. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they got their letters. Imagine. I think they should be kept in the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyways? But before Harry could answer, Madame Malcolm said, That's you done. That's you done, my dear. And Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy, hopped down from the footstool. Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose, said the drawing boy. Harry was rather quiet as he ate the ice cream. Hagrid had brought him chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. What's up? Said Hagrid. Nothing, Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills. Harry cheered up when they found a bottle of ink that changed colors as you wrote. When they had left the shop, he said, Hagrid, what's Quidditch? Blimey, Harry, I'd forgotten how little you know. Not knowing about Quidditch? Don't make me feel worse, said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy and Madame Malkin's. And he said people from Muggle families shouldn't even be allowed in? You're not from a Muggle family. If he had known who you were, he's grown up knowing your name if his parents were wizard folk. You saw that everyone in the Leaky Cauldron was like when they saw you. Anyways, what does he know about it? Some of the best I ever saw were the ones with the magic in them in a long line of muggles. Look at your mom. Look at what she had for a sister. So what is Quidditch? It's our sport, wizard sport. It's like soccer in Muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch, played up in the air on broomsticks, and there are 4 balls. Sorta hard to explain the rules. And what are Slytherins and Hufflepuffs? Schoolhouses. There are 4. There are 4. Everyone says Hufflepuffs are a lot old duffers, but I bet I'm a Hufflepuff, said Harry gloomily. Better Hufflepuff than Slytherin, he said darkly. There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. You know who was one. You know who was at Hogwarts? Years and years ago, said Hagrid. They bought Harry's schoolbooks in the shop called Flourish and Blots, where the shelves were stacked to the ceiling with books as large as paving stones, bound in leather, books the size of postage stamps covered in silk, books full of peculiar symbols, and a few books with nothing in them at all. Even Dudley, who never read anything, would have been so wild to get his hands on some of these. Hagrid almost had to drag Harry away from the curses and counter curses. Bewitch your friends and befuddle your enemies with this latest revenge. Hair loss, jelly legs, tongue-tying, and much, much more, by Professor Vindictus Viridian. I was trying to find out how to curse Dudley. I'm not saying that it's not a good idea, but you're not supposed to use magic in the Muggle world, except in very special circumstances, said Hagrid. And anyways, you couldn't work on any of them curses yet. You'll need a lot more study before you even get to that level. Hagrid wouldn't let Harry buy a solid gold cauldron either. It says pewter on the list. But they got a nice set of scales for weighing potion ingredients and a collapsible brass telescope. Then they visited an apothecary, which was fascinating enough to make up for its horrible smell. A mixture of bad egg and rotted cabbage. Barrels of slimy stuff stood on the floors. Jars of herbs, dried roots, and bright powders lined the walls. Bundles of feathers and strings of fangs and snarled claws hung from the ceiling. While Hagrid asked the man behind the counter for a supply of some basic potion ingredients for Harry, Harry himself examined a silver unicorn horn at 21 galleons, each in minuscules, glittery and black beetle eyes, at 5 nuts a scoop. Outside the apothecary, Hagrid checked Harry's list again. Just your mom left. Oh, yeah, I still haven't gotten your birthday present. Harry felt himself go red. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Tell you what, I'll get you an animal. Not a toad. Toads went out of fashion years ago. You'd be laughed at. And I don't like cats. They make me sneeze. I'll get you an owl. All kids want owls. They're dead useful, carrying your mail and everything. 20 minutes later, they left Ileb's Owl's Emporium, which had been dark and full of rustling and flickering jewel-bright eyes. Harry now carried a large cage that held a beautiful snowy owl, fast asleep with her head under her wing. He couldn't stop stammering, his thanks sounding just like Professor Quirrell. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Don't expect you'd had a lot of presents from the Dursleys. Just Ollivanders left. Now, only a place for wands. Ollivanders. And yeah, you gotta have the best wand. A magic wand? This was what Harry had been really looking forward to. The last shop was narrow and shabby. Peeling gold letters over the door read, Ollivanders, maker of fine wands since 382 BC. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in the dusty window. A tinkling bell rang somewhere in the depths of the shop as they stepped inside. It was a tiny place, empty except for a single spindly chair that Hagrid sat on to wait. Harry felt strangely as though he had entered a very strict library. He swallowed a lot of new questions that had just occurred to him, and looked instead of the thousands of narrow boxes piled neatly right up to the ceiling. For some reason, the back of his neck prickled. The dust and the silence in here seemed to tingle with some magic secret. Good afternoon, said a soft voice. Harry jumped. Hagrid must have jumped too, because there was a loud crunching noise, and he got off quickly the spindly chair. An old man was standing before them, his eyes wide, pale and shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. Hello? Said Harry awkwardly. Ah, yes, said the man. Yes, I thought I'd be seeing you soon. Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself buying her first wand. 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work. Mr. Ollivander moved closer to Harry. Harry wished that he would blink. Those silvery eyes were a bit creepy. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand, 11 inches, pliable, a little more power, and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favored it. It really was the wand that he chose. I say your father favored it. It's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course. Mr. Ollivander had come so close that he and Harry were almost nose to nose. Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes, and that's where Mr. Ollivander touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead with a long white finger. I'm so sorry to say I've sold the wand that did that to you, he said softly. 13½ inches, yet powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands, well, if I had known that was the wand, going out into the world to do that, he shook his head, and then, to Harry's relief, spotted Hagrid. Rupus Hagrid, how nice to see you again. Oak 16 inches, rather bendy, wasn't it? It was, sir, yes, said Hagrid. Good wand, that one, but I suppose they snapped it in half when you got expelled, said Mr. Ollivander, suddenly stern. Yes, they did, yes, said Hagrid, shuffling his feet. I've still got the pieces, though, he added brightly. But you don't use them, said Mr. Ollivander sharply. Oh, no, sir, said Hagrid quickly. Harry noticed he gripped his pink umbrella very tightly as he spoke. Said Mr. Ollivander, giving Hagrid a piercing look. Well, now, Mr. Potter, let's see. He pulled a long tape measure with a silver marking out of his pocket. Which is your wand arm? Well, I'm right-handed, said Harry. Hold your arm out, that's it. He measured Harry from the shoulder to his finger, then his wrist to his elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and round his head. As he measured, he said, Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance. Mr. Potter, we use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorn, dragons, and phoenixes are quite the same. And of course, you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand. Harry suddenly realized that the tape measure, which had been measuring between his nostrils, was doing this on its own. Mr. Ollivander was flitting around the shelves, taking down boxes. "That will do," he said, and the tape measure crumpled into a heap on the floor. Right then, Mr. Potter tried this one. "Beech wood and dragon heartstrings, 9 inches, nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave." Harry took the wand and, feeling foolish, waved it around a bit. But Mr. Ollivander snatched it out of his hand almost at once. "Maple and phoenix feathers, 7 inches. Quite whippy. Try." Harry tried, but he hardly raised the wand when it was too snatched back by Mr. Ollivander. "No, no. Here, ebony and unicorn hair, 8.5 inches. Springy. Go, go, go. Go try it." Harry tried, and he had no idea what Mr. Ollivander was waiting for. The pile of tried wands was mounting higher and higher on the spindly chair, but the more wands Mr. Ollivander pulled from the shelves, the happier he seemed to become. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder, now, yes, why not unusual combination? Holly and phoenix feathers, 11 inches, nice and supple?" Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand above his head and brought it swishing down through the dusty air, and a stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end like fireworks, throwing dancing spots of light onto the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivander cried, "Ah, bravo! Yes, indeed! Oh, very good! Well, well, well! How curious! How very curious!" He put Harry's wand back into the box and wrapped it in brown paper, still muttering, "Curious, curious." "Sorry," said Harry, "but what's curious?" Mr. Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter, every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should have been destined for this wand when its brother, why, when its brother gave you that scar." Harry swallowed. "Yes, 13.5 inches. You curious. Indeed, how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great." Harry shivered. He wasn't sure he liked Mr. Ollivander too much. He paid 7 gold galleons for his wand, and Mr. Ollivander bowed them from the shop. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky as Harry and Hagrid made their way back down Diagon Alley, back through the wall, and back through the leaky cauldron, now empty. Harry didn't speak at all as they walked down the road. He didn't even notice how much people were gawking at him on the underground, as they were, with all their funny-shaped packages, with the snowy owl asleep in its cage on Harry's lap. Another escalator, out into the Paddington station. Harry only realized where they were when Hagrid tapped him on the shoulder. "Got time for a bite to eat before your train leaves?" he said. He bought Harry a hamburger, and they sat down on plastic seats to eat them. Harry kept looking around. Everything looked so strange somehow. "You all right, Harry?" "You're very quiet," said Hagrid. Harry wasn't sure he could explain. He just had the best birthday of his life. And yet, he chewed his hamburger, trying to find the words. "Everyone thinks I'm special," he said. "All those people in the leaky cauldron, Professor Quirrell, Mr. Ollivander, but I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect great things? I'm famous and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when the night my parents died." Hagrid leaned across the table. Behind the wild beard and eyebrows, he wore a very kind smile. "Don't worry, Harry. You'll learn fast enough. Everyone starts at the beginning at Hogwarts. You'll be just fine. Just be yourself. I know it's hard. You've been singled out, and that's why it's always been hard. But you'll have a great time at Hogwarts. I did, still do, as a matter of fact. Hagrid helped Harry on the train and would take him back to the Dursleys, then handed him an envelope. Your ticket for Hogwarts, he said. 1st of September, King's Cross. It's all on your ticket. Any problems with the Dursleys, send me a letter with your owl. She'll know where to find me. See you soon, Harry. The train pulled out of the station. Harry wanted to watch Hagrid until he was out of sight. He rose in his seat and pressed his nose against the window, but he blinked and Hagrid was gone. And that is the end of chapter 5. Alright, so I already gave you one of your questions. So my second 2 questions was, the second one is, where is their first stop in Diagon Alley? What is it called? What's the store or the whatever it is called? And name, what does Harry's uniform consist of? I will take, if you can get, let's see, there are 4 things he needs. If you can name 2 of them, I will give you credit for that whole question. All right, 4th graders, thank you for listening, and we will read chapter 6 tomorrow.